Hey everybody, Simone here with Bulletproof Business Growth, as always with some ideas and insights, what to pay attention to when you are growing and scaling your business. So today's episode title is Broken Promises, Boiling Points, and Burnout, what your team's silence is really telling you. So, what we're talking about here is disengagement, really. And it's not a character flaw, it's a response to broken leadership systems overall. So today we're going to explore why your team may be emotionally checked out and why their reactions are partly due to systems failure and what to rebuild if you want to make sure your best people stay and they care and that they lead with you, so it's not all on you. Now, imagine this scenario, right? You're running late again because another fire popped up. You had to step into a project that your team should have handled, and then you lose it. You blow a fuse, you lose it, and that might look like a snappy email or just frustrated tone. But overall, everybody feels it. The tension in the air is thick enough to cut with a knife. And, we all know you didn't mean to yell, but then you did because you lost it. And in that moment, something happens that's subtle and that's dangerous and that we can't ignore, because whenever that kind of thing happens, your team inherently stops trusting you because this is dangerous. This is not a safe situation in their brain, right? So what that means is they stop asking questions. They stop fully showing up. They stop believing that things will change. And here is what's even harder to hear for you. Most of the time, they won't say a word to you because they will be quiet. They quietly disengage, which is what people do when they don't feel safe. They kind of sit back, they take it, they don't say anything, and they kind of do their own thing. So today we're pulling back the curtain on why employees mentally check out and why, as business owners and managers, sometimes why we snap and what's really behind a team that no longer cares. I can't even tell you how many times I talk to our newer clients and they will tell me, I'm the only one in this business who really gives a like nobody else cares. They just kind of do what they have to, minimum amount possible, not to get fired. But we all know that growing a business, you need your team to be fully with you. They need to lead with you. This can't be all on you. So for this to actually work, we have to get to a place where your team is with you, where they lead with you, where they strategize with you, and you actually feel like you're getting your ROI out of them. So we'll look at that, and more importantly, I show you how to rebuild that trust, which is super important, reignite their buy-in so that they show up and that they never have to rely on fear or force or fire drills to get performance again. So you'll never have to resort to those methods. So let's start with, there was a big study, MIT Sloan, and they analyzed over 1.4 million Glassdoor reviews and found that toxic workplace culture is the number one reason people quit, which is 10x more than predictive than compensation. So think about this for a second. Toxic workplace is 10x more responsible for people quitting than what you think, or what many of you think, which is that you're not paying them enough, and that's the reason. Let that sink in. It's not the money, it's not the perks, it's culture, specifically the lack of clarity, inconsistently, if they feel like there's disrespect, and of course a big one is chaos. So that kind of sums this whole thing up. And it was another Gallup that confirms the fallout. It said something like 20%, 23% of employees are only actively engaged at work. So only 23% of employees are actively engaged at work. That means, if you have 10 people on your team, at least 7 of them, only 7, they're just going through the motions. So only 3 are actually doing the work and showing up and being super engaged and delivering value. And 7 of them are actually just delivering the bare minimum. And you probably wonder why, because most workplaces are quietly dysfunctional. So it doesn't have to mean that it's hostile, it's not necessarily abusive with yelling and screaming, but this lack of clarity, the lack of support, the lack of clear leadership, it's draining, it feels disorganized, and it's chaotic, and it's confusing. And the confused mind doesn't perform, if that makes any sense. This could look like you're in a business where there's a lot of upheaval. Many of us are. So priorities change often, too often for your team. And think about this. It's like for you, it might feel doable because you're in your brain, you know what's going on. So when priorities change, you can connect the dots for yourself. They cannot. So if the priorities change weekly and you're not bringing them with you with the right systems and structures, they will feel left behind. You may say one thing and do another. Communication is reactive, not proactive. And maybe, you'll have people who you're super excited about and you're praising them one day and the next day they're pissing you off. So you're reprimanding them. So it's kind of that feeling of a roller coaster for people. And that also means there's no consistency and no follow through. So there's nothing for them to connect to. So here's what disengagement really looks like. This is a quick story, a real story. One business owner that I worked with, we'll just call her Amanda. She ran a thriving home services company, and she had a team of 14 people. And every Monday she'd gather them, do the leadership meeting, share goals. But then, so that was Monday, but by Wednesday, those goals had already shifted. And by Friday, she would be micromanaging projects she had delegated on Monday. So by Friday, everybody had their chops busted. Everybody would feel like they're not doing a good job, and why do this anyway? And her team wasn't lazy. It's not even like they were bad at what they were doing, but they were confused, right? So they didn't have that clarity. So because she tended to take over, they stopped trying. And then they waited for Amanda to kind of swoop in and be the hero and fix things or change directions again. And this happened over and over. And disengagement is often a rational response to dysfunction. Now, next week, and I'm going to shamelessly plug this a few times throughout this episode, we're going to teach a new workshop. And we're going to talk about this invisible attrition, because people still show up. They still smile in the meetings, but mentally they've already left the building. And then, of course, your business suffers. At first, it might seem slowly, but then all at once, you'll see kind of the first woman away. So let's talk about the elephant in the room here. I was reading this article in Inc. magazine, and it was talking about yelling at work, people losing it. And it was talking about how it has a whole less to do with anger than other issues, which are overwhelm, pressure, and a lot of those things stem from broken or non-existing systems. So you don't yell because you're mean, you yell because you're maxed out and you're snapping. So maybe you've been repeating yourself for the 5th time and you're explaining something that seems hyper obvious to you, or you're covering for a team member who's unclear, or you're fixing a dropped item again, which you shouldn't have to fix. And a lot of times you're running 24/7, you're operating without sleep strategy or space to think, and who knows when you ate the last time, right? So in that space, in that state, every single little issue little issue, right, feels like a threat. It feels overwhelming, and your brain switches into that fight and flight mode, which is of course extremely stressful, and it never produces a good state of mind. So I've seen this hundreds of times in clients, and there's one moment I'll never forget with a contractor named Ben. And Ben had just finished a really bad quarter. So not bad necessarily, but it was brutal. It was, I think he had 3 big jobs, 2 people quit. He was working 12-hour days in the field, and he still had to come back to the office and deal with invoicing and estimates and all that kind of stuff. And then one of the days, his PM forgot to order drywall. Could be a simple mistake, but at that point, Ben was so overloaded, he exploded. And, what broke him wasn't the order that got missed. It was the weight of being the only one who was holding it all together. So yelling here is a pressure valve, and it tells you exactly where the system is failing. And even if you're not yelling, your team still feels it. And that's where I said in the beginning, right? It's like it's palpable. You can feel the air is thick. You can cut it with a knife, and everybody just kind of sits back and waits what's going to happen because it feels dangerous. So this tension, the clip tone, the unpredictability, that builds this emotional fog in the office. And, that's really why one of the first things we help leaders do at our workshop is to implement delegation systems powered by AI. So delegation systems that do the heavy lifting for you, so you are no longer the bottleneck that everything has to go through. Because, if your brain is full, your fuse will always be short. And the more full your brain, the more overwhelmed you feel, and the less you can actually be responsible for the way that you're behaving. And I don't mean that in an excusing way, but that's how it happens. So when we go a little deeper on that, you might think your team is disengaged right now, or they behave entitled, or they seem unmotivated. But the truth is, you've probably broken some promises with them before. And, I don't mean legal ones. I mean kind of the understood promises, the soft ones, the emotional contracts, like, we're building something great together. You may have promised that before. Or, maybe this has happened before and you've come to them and said, hey, this time we're going to do things differently. This time things are going to change. And, if it's been a lot of pressure, you may have said, hey, we're going to go slow down. We're going to get better organized and support the team better. And then that might happen for, a few days, and then it all goes back to where it was. And that means the work's piling up, your client, you're tired. Of course, you're going to have a client push back at some point. A job goes sideways. And that's when those promises evaporate and go back to the way things were. So it's a little bit of, you might have a little bit of a honeymoon where everybody's excited about it. You're excited about it because, of course, everybody wants it to be better. But then business comes in and it all goes to the wayside. So I was working with a funeral group at some point where the owner kept promising, hey, we'll get more help and we'll fix the scheduling nightmare. And weeks and months passed, nothing changed. And then eventually what started happening is the team stopped speaking up. They stopped bringing any issues to the owner. And then they started calling out a lot. They started calling out sick. We had several, I think 2 of them left pretty quickly. And the reason really was because all these broken promises, all these times when they got to feel the relief of, oh, finally things are going to change, and then they didn't, it feels like betrayal to people. So, and I know it's not nefarious, it's not malicious, it's an operational failure. And that's why I teach business owners how to use AI tools to do what you say, even when your bandwidth runs out, right? So this is really the first time in history where you can use these tools that are coming up with incredible speed to help you do all that stuff that, for one thing, you shouldn't be doing. You could be doing things that are much more valuable to your business. You probably don't like to be doing them, but when you don't do them, you leave your team behind. So think about like daily briefings that could be scheduled and run by a bot, or ownership and accountability assigned in real time as things evolve and change. Feedback prompts delivered automatically, so everybody always knows where they are. Progress tracked without you manually checking in. And that's not just professional. That's leadership your team can believe in. So it fills gaps that automatically happen when you are taxed to the edge of your bandwidth and you can't do more. So this is where those promises actually get fulfilled. And maybe, it doesn't happen at the same level as if you would do it. Maybe it's missing a bit of connection, but you can still bring that in combination with the AI tool and still deliver a much better outcome than if you don't do it, or if you just do it sporadically. So let's talk a little bit about what does create buy-in, because it's not, another pep talk or a pizza party. Honestly, it's the thing that most entrepreneurs abhor the most, which is structure. And, I'm a great fan of saying structure sets you free. So we really need to get the structure in place. And, if you've been following me for a while, you've heard me talk about the 5 C's, and they are just incredibly applicable. That's why I'm going to keep beating on this. So we can use the 5 C's to rebuild trust and to increase performance. So if you remember what they are, clarity, right? Everybody knows what success looks like. There's no guessing. Context. People understand why their role matters and how all the pieces fit together, how all the dots are connected. Of course, we need great communication so they know how to ask, update, escalate, and contribute to the initiatives. And this gives them certainty, right? They know how they're being measured, what they're being measured on, and what good looks like. So important. And they also know that when all these pieces work together, it makes them feel certain that they're following the right leader and that they're being cared for. So, and of course, the really big one, the 5th one, is consistency. So that's, the leadership tone, the cadence, and the systems don't change on your mood or, based on your inbox, on the spur of the moment, whatever it is. So they can rely on something, right? We've been talking a lot about the 6 human needs, and this points right back to that, because they need the certainty and the uncertainty at the same time. So imagine this is like you walk into your office, your ops dashboard shows who's on target because you now have a scoreboard, so you can see what the initiatives are, what got done, and AI has already prepped you for your next check-ins because you know what's happening. And your team members have already submitted wins, roadblocks, suggestions. So now you actually know when you're planning your meeting what to plan the meeting on, right? You know how to set up your agenda so it's the most impactful to everybody. And you also know what needs to be addressed in a team meeting, what needs to be addressed in one-on-ones because it requires more. And this is something that is reliable, right? So nobody is waiting on you, nobody is checking out, and really that's what the 5 C's look like in action. And AI makes them sustainable, because what it really means when you use AI tools to their best function is that you use them to do all the setup. you use them to build the systems, and then the systems are running with very little input from you, so you can actually focus on implementing the systems with your team and bring the humanity and the connection and the relationships to the systems so that people actually embrace them and run with them. And at the workshop, we're going to give you the exact tools and plug and play templates to install this into your business. And the really good news is, I know people have asked me before, do I need high level? Do I need to be, a techie? No, absolutely not. So this is very, very simple. Everybody who has a computer and access to the internet can use it. So now let's look at the kind of scary part. So what if you've already blown it, right? You've yelled, you've broken promises, you've let chaos become the culture. Is it too late? Has this ship sailed? I will say no, but you do need to do a reset with your team, and it starts by building your leadership credibility. So here's how you do that. First of all, you have to own it. You have to cop to that you did this, call out what's been happening, and then show them the plan. This is not about making a big speech, right? Because you've been doing a lot of talking already, which is part of why the trust is broken, because you've maybe have done a lot of talking and not a lot of implementing. So show them your plan. And your plan here is not a speech, it's a system. And then ask for input. Invite your team into the rebuild. Let them have a voice in it. And then, of course, once you build this system, follow through is your main game here, consistently. So you need to follow through consistently, and maybe not perfectly, but that's really where you work together as a team. I always say your team doesn't need a perfect leader. It needs a predictable one. They need to know what to rely on with you, what they can expect. And of course, what they have been expecting has been not necessarily the right thing. So now we're resetting and we're helping them actually reset their not just their expectations, but also their belief in you and into the company and into who they can be in the company. And those are the really important dots to connect here. So at the workshop that we are leading on June 25th, we'll show you how to rebuild trust at that systems level. Because when systems create consistency, consistency creates trust, and trust delivers results. So these are really important to plug together. So, my final thoughts here, most of you don't have a motivation problem. It's not your job to motivate people. It's your job to inspire people, to give them clarity, and then the systems and the tools so that they can actually be successful. Disengagement, burnout, and reactivity don't go away by trying harder. They go away when the team finally believes that the chaos is over. So join us for the Bulletproof Business Growth Workshop. We'll send out the details. We'll put a registration link under this post, and let's build the team, the systems that really make engagement automatic. Just think about this. You want clarity, you want accountability, and that means you can use AI-powered consistency. And this is really how you stop being the bottleneck, and then you can start being the leader that your team can rely on and that your business really needs. So click the link below, register for the workshop, and let's build that trust. Let's reset your culture, and let's help you become the leader that I know you really want to be. I'll see you there.